Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Stephanie Lee, and I'm a psychologist at the Child Mind Institute. We're a national nonprofit that supports children and families with gold standard mental health care, advice, and resources, all online and accessible to everyone. You can learn more about the resources we have available for families during the coronavirus crisis, including telehealth evaluations and treatment, by visiting childmind.org/coronavirus. Today, I'd like to talk with you just a little bit more about reinforcing appropriate behaviors or desired behaviors. I'm going to answer your questions about this and anything else that you're wondering about through the next half hour. Post your questions in the feed. We'll also post some links to helpful resources on the childmind.org website, and the details about the next Facebook Live will also be provided. Remember, we're here every day at 10 a.m. and at 4:30 p.m., and we look forward to your questions daily. Great. So before we get started with questions, I do just want to talk a little bit about generally reinforcing desired or appropriate behaviors. A good rule of thumb and something to consider is that the more you praise something, the more you will see it. And really, if you've watched any of the other Facebook Lives that I've done, I am a big fan of praise. I talk about it a lot, providing positive attention for good behavior or desired behaviors. And I think you may have heard me talk before about any kind of praise is great praise. However, there are two different types of praise. There's what we call labeled praise, which is when you're literally telling someone what it is about their behavior that you like. And there's general praise, which is things like good job, way to go, high five. Okay. Any kind of praise, as I said, is important, and the more praise that you can provide, the better off you're going to be. The more labeled praises, the more specific praise that you can provide, the better off you're going to be. If someone says, Dr. Lee or Stephanie, you look good, I'm going to feel good. It's going to make me feel, happy. It's likely to increase some of my good behaviors. If someone says, Dr. Lee, you look good in maroon, I'm definitely going to go buy some more maroon outfits. So the more you can put a label on your praise, the more specific you can be, the chances of the child understanding what you wanted to see more of, the better. The reason why this is important is across a number of different domains. First and foremost, we know that young kids, and particularly inattentive kids, often are not cued into what it is we were prompting right before we provided a praise. So if a child is sitting there and looking all around and watching TV and also playing on their iPad and talking to their brother, and you say, good job, it may be confusing for the child what it was about their behavior just now that you really liked. If you said, great job sitting so quietly, or great job staying in the living room while I'm working in the kitchen, that's going to cue your child into the specificity, what it was about their behavior that you liked. It wasn't about talking to my brother. It wasn't about, picking my nose. It was about sitting here quietly or letting you work while I stayed in the living room while you were in the kitchen. So the more we can put a label on our praise, the better we're going to be. We also want praise to be as immediate as possible, because kids and adults actually want their attention and their praise big, bold, and immediate. Meaning they want this to happen in close proximity. They want the duration and the enthusiasm to be big and bold, and they want it to happen, like I said, immediately following their good behavior. We all wish that we could do our work and get our paycheck immediately following. Adults are able to wait 2 weeks or maybe a month for their pay schedule to come to fruition. Young kids and teenagers need their paychecks to come very quickly. And then as your more desired behaviors, then fade the consistency or the frequency of those paychecks across time. Again, before I jump into the questions, the other thing I want to talk about is that praise does not need to be just verbal. Praise can come in a lot of different forms. And in fact, we often want to make sure, particularly for young kids or for teenagers, that we're pairing our verbal praise with a physical praise or possibly a tangible reinforcer or reward. So meaning when you're telling your child, thank you so much for letting mom get a couple more minutes on her phone call, you may want to pair that with some tickle fingers or with a thumbs up or a high five or a special cue that you work out with your kid, maybe a signal that shows them, this is our special signal that indicates when I when you've done such a really great job. So thinking about ways to make sure that you are pairing your praise, your verbal praise with, like I said, physical indications, enthusiastic things, possibly even a small token or sticker or reward that your child is motivated by. We don't want to give stickers if your child doesn't like stickers, but if the stickers represent their ability to be able to play outside or be done with their work when they get 10 of them, that can be a really meaningful reward or tangible that you can pair with your verbal praise. So now that we're thinking about praise and we're thinking about the importance of it, I'm going to go ahead and jump in to some of the questions that we have here about reinforcing desired behaviors. This one here is about my child is acting out all of the time and I feel like it's my fault. I've been so stressed and definitely not at my best as a parent. I know I'm setting a bad example, but I'm under so much pressure, it feels impossible. What do I do? So I want to let you know that you're not alone. Many, many parents and caregivers are in this position and situation right now. While it doesn't make it any easier or any better, I do want to validate your situation and empathize. The reason why I'm spending a little bit of time to do those things is because that is the first step in addressing these concerns. It's important for you to have identified this and to bring it to the forefront. So big praise, a labeled praise for you. Great job identifying the area that you need to work on and asking for help. That is one of the best things also that you can do in terms of modeling for your kids is to actually ask for help. Have them see you asking for help or have them see you modeling that you need to take a break from time to time. You need to do implement some self-care. And self-care in this day and age can look a lot different to a lot of different people. It might mean falling asleep in the bath with a glass of wine. It might mean you went to the bathroom for 2 seconds by yourself to eat a special set of cookies that you've been hiding from the kids because they're your favorite. Really, self-care is going to look a lot different across all of us these days. Maybe hiding in the bathroom to play 5 rounds of Candy Crush really quickly with your earphones on. But really making sure that you set aside some time to replenish yourself, to put the mask on yourself as we talk about. You cannot take care of others if you're not taking care of yourself. And you do need to make sure that you're modeling for your kids that it's important to take care of yourself as well. In terms of actually managing the situations as they come up, I do think it's important to try to identify the situations in which you're most triggered and what about those situations leads you to feel so triggered. The more objective that you can be when you're viewing problem behavior, the easier it's going to be to take the emotion out of it and to respond more objectively. When you are responding more objectively and less emotionally, it does provide you the opportunity to be your best self or to think again a little bit more calmly and strategically about the way you're intervening or the way you're addressing problem behavior. You also want to make sure that you give yourself a break. If you do manage a situation in a way that was less than optimal, first, know that you're not alone. Second, remember that you did these things pre-coronavirus as well, and it was okay then. Your kids were resilient then and managed and got through. Apologize. When things have calmed down, when you've moved on, feel free to say to your child in a calm, brief way, I'm sorry I lost my temper before. I was feeling really overwhelmed. It's not okay for me to use that language when I'm upset. I'm going to try better. Once you've addressed it briefly, you don't need to belabor it. Kids understand that we're in a difficult position as well. And the best thing we can do, again, is model how we would want our child to manage it if they lost their cool and did something inappropriate. Apologize and try better next time. Another question that we have coming in the feed is, I need help with when my son makes a mistake, then loses enthusiasm. He's a perfectionist and meltdown with any tiny mistake. Any help, please? Great question. Coming from a perfectionist myself, I can honestly understand and relate to this concern. from both ends, from the parenting end and from the patient's end, right? It is overwhelming times, and a lot of kids, particularly kids who might be a little bit more controlling or a little bit more anxious, are looking to control things in their environment because it does feel like so many things around them are out of control. This is an important factor in terms of making sure that kids do feel comfortable and are managing their anxieties and things in the best way that they can. But it's also important for us to make sure that kids are inadvertently being reinforced for the negative behaviors that they might display following a mistake. So if your child does make a mistake and is able to move on, you want to make sure that you're going crazy with your labeled praises, right? Great job being flexible. I love the way that you moved on so quickly. We get through a lot more when you're willing to move on from your mistakes so quickly. So making a big deal out of that. You're being so flexible. Possibly even setting a goal in terms of flexibility prior to the start of the assignment, saying, if you can be flexible 3 different times during this assignment, we can have a special dinner, or you get to pick what we have for dinner. Maybe being transparent with your child about what some of those goals are so that they know that you're working towards them. They know what they're working towards. Setting your goals at a reasonable state too, not being too lofty with those goals so that your child is really likely to hit that bar. And then slowly but surely, as your child is hitting that bar, you can increase the demand or increase the amount that you need them to be flexible and move on after a mistake. So hopefully that gives you just a little bit of an idea there, but also making sure that you are not giving any additional attention, if at all possible, to mistakes when they're made. So if your child is seemingly having a big blow up or a big meltdown in response to their mistake, making sure that you don't inadvertently reinforce their upsetness by getting upset in an intense way with them too. So while you might be responding to the intensity of their emotion, they may end up thinking it is a big deal when I make a mistake. So really, when they're getting big with it, you need to stay little with it. Keep it calm, keep it cool, keep it collected. Really making sure that kids don't get hot and blow up when they're upset. Kids don't get cold and give up when they're upset, but they try to stay cool somewhere in the middle. Really, really great question. Again, one I know that many, many parents and caregivers can relate to in this time. So here's one about reinforcing appropriate behaviors. I'm trying to get my ASD daughter, my child with autism, to stick to a school timetable. She has GCSEs, hold on one second, next year. Any tips for more motivation? Well, first and foremost, I'm going to give you a labeled praise. Great job. 1, again, identifying where you need an area of help. Number 2, great job with you being an advocate for your child who's in this situation to be thinking a little bit more about the best ways to prepare her ahead of time. I think the very first thing I would recommend is seeking some advice or any suggestions, resources, tips, helps, anything from the staff or the resources that your child was working with previously. So if there's school staff, if there's therapists, if there's coaches, anyone that she was working with previously who can give you some ideas about the ways that she was motivated most, or areas that of particular strength or area of limitation, so that you have all of that information available to you. I think that's a great starting point. Secondly, I think a little bit about what are maybe some targeted goals that you have for her in relation to increasing her compliance. So is it really just getting her to come to the table to get started with work? Is that really where is that an issue? Or no, she does that pretty well. It's actually when things get a little bit more challenging that she's having difficulty. So you want to identify the areas of need that she's having and then get very targeted in those areas. We want to make sure that we're also using potent reinforcers or potent motivators for your child, thinking about what fuels her fire, right? I think I said this in one of the Facebook Lives recently that I like chocolate, but I don't work for chocolate. If all of a sudden child mine decided they were going to start giving me my paycheck in chocolate, I probably wouldn't show up to work because I only work for money. I only work for something that, again, is meaningful to me in a lot of different areas. So we may need to find your child's money, if you will, and particularly to make sure that we sweeten the pot or use a high potency external reinforcer to encourage her stamina, and maybe build some positive momentum around her assignments. Once a child is coming in contact with internal reinforcement, when they're actually completing their demands, when they're actually coming in contact with the tasks and coming in contact with success, then you can fade the external reinforcement or motivation across time. Right now, it sounds like there probably needs to be a level of rewards, praise, and possibly even a little bit of escape if she does the right thing. So I would like for you to study for 10 minutes. If you do a good job studying for 8, I'll let you have the last 2 minutes to yourself. Really making sure that you're getting as much bang for your buck and as efficient a work block as you possibly can. Any tips with keeping my teens engaged with academics and interest? Teens acting very needy, it's hard to entertain and engage and keep it together. Really great question. Teenagers are no easier in confinement than they were when we were out of captivity, right? And in fact, things are going to be more challenging when moody teenagers are trapped indoors, denied access to the things that they feel are their lifelines, their bloodlines, their peers, their social networks, honestly, just even some space and time away from you. So what we know is that teens are struggling in these circumstances. And the very first thing we want to do is to cut them a little bit of a break, to cut them a little bit of a break there, to let them know that we understand, or we maybe don't understand, but we can appreciate the experience that they're in right now and the situation that they're in. And I would urge parents, if you haven't had candid discussions with your teenagers about the way that they're impacted or the way that they're feeling, to do that. I think honestly offering up your own feelings, starting the dialogue with how you feel about things, how overwhelmed you've been, what are some of the unexpected ways that you were feeling. The more and more that you offer your own opinions, ideas, and thoughts, the more and more your child will feel comfortable sharing these things with you. Not a surprise that I'm going to go ahead and say something about labeled praise here, right? So if your child, if your teenager, your adolescent shares anything with you, even if you don't feel that it's maybe particularly meaningful right that second, praise it. Thanks so much for telling me about that. I love when you share with me. It makes it a lot easier to feel close to you when I know what's going on, or it's easier for me to help, or we can problem solve together when I have a little bit more information about how you're thinking and feeling. So the more that we can encourage teenagers to tell us about the ways that they're struggling, the easier it's going to be for us to intervene and target directly. My suggestions in terms of keeping your teenager or adolescent engaged or concentrated aren't really all that different than the recommendations we have for younger kids. First and foremost, we do want to make sure that when it comes to activity level, when it comes to their sleep, when it comes to their nutrition, those things are all intact and in place and not impacting their ability to focus and concentrate in the day. If it really does seem that it's more about motivation, we may need to sweeten the pot and think about ways that we can get creative with rewards, think outside of the box. And as I said, maybe offer your child an opportunity to pick a special dinner. Maybe you offer your child an opportunity to make a video on Instagram that they need your help making, the freeze challenge, or one of the TikTok videos where they do the switching things, right? Chances are your child wants, your adolescent and teenager would love for you to engage with them around those things. Maybe not always if they had other friends available to them, but right now you might be their best audience. And so thinking about ways that you can insert yourself as a reward to them, again, in a creative way, and then using that as the carrot or the reward or the motivator that they can earn once they've done a good job with their work. And good job may need to be defined very specifically. You're going to do numbers 1 through 7 without arguing. You're going to write 3 sentences under numbers 3 through 5, and then you can be done. Well, that's what we will consider good work. So I think the specificity is also really important, because teens and adolescents can be like little lawyers or expert negotiators, where it's very important to have a behavioral contract ahead of time, so that you know if they've met the expectation, and your child, teen or adolescent, knows whether or not they've met the expectation as well. whether or not they've earned that carrot or not. Keeping in mind that it's not fair to change that expectation if for some reason if I was in a contract with child mine and my boss said one thing and I worked really hard that way for one whole week, and then at the end of the week my boss said, oh, it's true, I was going to give you your paycheck, but you also need to do these 3 more things. That's not really the best way to work. So you really need to make sure that behavioral contracting, those negotiations happen proactively before the contract's in place, because once the contract is in place, you pretty much have to roll with it. You can always change the contract in the very next week. You can renegotiate once the reward is earned, but you want to be very conscious of that. My ODD ADHD child can't focus on schoolwork. It creates an explosive situation. Motivation, praise, targets, nothing seems to work. Is there anything else I can do? It's a really, really, really great question, and I apologize, and I'm sorry that kind of given the general things or the main go-to things that we offer feel not so successful, or that they're not really hitting the mark for you. And I realize, in fact, that for a lot of families who are struggling in a lot of different ways and overwhelmed just on so many different levels, some of the things that we're saying here may feel impossible or really might feel like a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. And so I think it is important to prioritize and think a little bit about what's manageable and feasible for your family overall. What you're really trying to address, what you're really trying to intervene on, and then letting some of those other things go. That being said, I think it's also important to think about how often you're getting into battle, or how often these explosive arguments are happening. So is there any opportunity to reward or reinforce the absence of these explosive situations, just to change the momentum, just to switch things up or try to restore some calm or semblance into the household? Is there a way for us to reduce demands, talk with teachers, talk with school staff about the fact that things are very challenging right now, we need a little bit of a break? Can I get a week to have a little bit of a break on these assignments, or a little bit of a postponement on these assignments, while we reshape the culture of our household, or get our child a little bit more back on track? And then is there a way for us to think about the demands that we were previously placing? If they were on a scale of 1 to 10, a 7 or 8 hard, right? Is there a way for us to drop it all the way down to a 2, all the way down to a 1, almost tricking your child into some success so that we can build on that new momentum, so that we can really reshape, give a lot of praises, give a lot of attention for just following 1 or 2 very small or simple demands, one that your child may not even actually interpret as a demand, right? Once you've gotten a good groove going, once you've gotten praises going, again, maybe just in the absence of the aggressive behaviors, or just in the absence of the meltdowns, then are we able to insert a little bit more schoolwork? Are then we able to revisit maybe 1 or 2 bits of reading in the day there? So thinking a little bit about going all the way back to basics, taking all the demands off the table, and then really trying to put those back up once you've reestablished some better feedback. I think it's also important to think about ways to join your child and enjoy your child despite all of these things going on. So is it possible for you to wake up 5 minutes early and play Legos with your child before the busyness of the day kicks in? Are there ways to maybe find 1 or 2 moments to make a big deal out of their good behavior in the day? Because this can go a long way, not just for the child, but for you as well. So when a child is engaging in high frequency, high intensity problem behavior, parents are then primed to see that and to pick up on it and to almost kind of wait for it. And so what we also want to make sure that parents are doing is that you're giving yourself enough credit for the times when there wasn't a meltdown, right? He did accept that. He did actually put his plate in the sink quietly, and, no one asked him to do it. Or, he didn't put the sink in the plate, but he didn't throw it at me. That's a win right there, right? And really making sure that we maybe catch that time and say, thanks for being so gentle at the end of dinner. Really making sure that you're not giving unnecessary demands as well. Something that I talk with parents a lot about in treatment and in this situation is that when I tell a kid to do something, I truly picture myself like this, getting in battle with them. When I tell a kid to do something, it's gonna happen, right? And right now, my ability to get in it with kids has reduced dramatically given all of the life circumstances. So I really suggest that parents do a lot of these things themselves. They really kind of let some of these things go. They maybe, use creative ways to entice their child. It's time for cleanup. So rather than saying, please clean up the toys, maybe setting a timer and saying, I'm going to beat you. If I beat you before, if we don't beat the timer, then, then I'm going to race you upstairs for, and then I get to sit in your seat at dinner, right? Thinking about creative ways to maybe motivate your child without directly putting a demand in place, because knowing that once you put that demand in place, you really do want to follow through as consistently as you possibly can. Great question. I want to make sure I just touch very, very briefly on a couple questions that have come up in other Facebook Lives, just a little bit about managing spouses and managing caregivers who might not be managing these situations as well as you had hoped, right? So one question was, my husband's not handling this situation well. He's angry and afraid. He's snapping at me and he's snapping at the kids. I feel like his behavior is rubbing off on our kids. Any advice on how to talk to him about this without triggering more bad behavior? That would be great. Again, I just want to make sure I address this for caregivers because this is coming up so frequently. Parents that I've been working with for many years, who have been a great team for many years, are finding themselves stepping on each other's toes and having to figure out a new way to work together in new circumstances. So give yourself a break, give your partner a break, and remember that we do need to learn new ways, new systems for kind of navigating household routines that may have been going smoothly previously. It's also important to remember that labeled praises work for adults as well. So it is not a good idea when your husband or wife or whoever, if your partner is upset, that is not a teachable moment. That's not a time to say, remember, we've talked about this. You really need to calm down, right? Instead, I would say handle it the best you can, kind of crisis mode, do whatever you can, let it be, and then make sure you revisit it and discuss it later. As much as you get on your partners about times that things didn't go well, you need to make sure you praise and give them credit for times when things do go well. So if your partner steps away, lets you handle something, asks for help, if your partner gets less intensely upset than they might have previously when the child throws a pen at them for the 14th time that day, I want you to catch them, praise each other. Thanks for staying calm. Thanks for not losing your cool. Thanks for bringing me in on that one so I could help out. Wow, we're both overwhelmed. Let's write this one down and talk to the therapist about this later. So make sure that you're being kind to each other. You're finding opportunities to give each other good credit, good appreciation for the things that you are doing well. Really making sure that, again, you're highlighting those things, because if you're feeling sad and overwhelmed, your partner's feeling that way as well. It might be harder for them to give themselves credit when they're doing the good things, especially if you know that they're pretty hard on themselves, which we all are these days. So important to really make sure that we're giving each other those praises that we're giving to the kids as well. So hopefully what we're talking about is changing the culture of your household from one of disparaging comments to a lot of praising, a lot of positivity if at all possible. So I think that'll probably do it for today. So in closing, I want to thank you all again for joining me. I really, truly, sincerely hope that this was helpful. And remember, we're here every day at 10 a.m. and at 4:30 p.m. We look through your questions daily, as I said before, so check the post. We check the post for topics, and that gives us ideas to fuel our next live. The Child Mind Institute is here to help with the mental health and parenting needs of this coronavirus crisis, no matter where you are. As I said in the beginning, we have resources to help, from daily tips to consultation to gold standard telehealth treatments. Please go to childmind.org/coronavirus. Be safe, and thank you so much for joining me today.